My first painting is going to set the stage for where we are. I hope everybody can see my paper and my palette. Okay, great. So I'm using, this is a Daniel Smith watercolor that I filled into my own palette with tubes. I'm going to start with, I'm going to be painting, like I said, where we are. So this is intended to be Manhattan, and this is New York State up here. This is, I'm doing, this technique is like a wet on dry. I'm going to try and show a few techniques. I'm looking at a little map over here just to sort of help me guide. This is Connecticut here. My style is to include a lot of different greens for this. I think I don't really necessarily want like one solid texture. I want to show a lot of different ones. So this is Manhattan. So this is like Brooklyn and some Queens and Great Neck. I'm from Port Washington right there. Here's Bayville right about there. And then we're going to exaggerate. That's the North Fork. Shelter, I think it's Shelter Island, South Fork. So that's our Long Island. And here we are, right? This is where we are beginning our evening, right there. Okay? I like to add, there's a painting and is for me, it's so much about light and shadow. And I always try and envision a light coming up at like 10 or 11 o'clock and shining down. If there was a clock up here, like at around 10 or 11 o'clock, and it adds a little bit of a depth. Let's see. Okay, thank you. And then here's our Fire Island. And, you know, just like with a map, there's always a fun border. And then I also want to include, I am a huge lighthouse fan. And in the book, that's okay. In the book, I believe Maddie and Dylan, like 4 miles to the lighthouse, and they climb up 182 steps. Is that right, Jane? I believe she would agree with me. She wrote that. So let's just put a little lighthouse in there. There's also like a little red house right next to the lighthouse, like maybe where the gatekeeper or the lighthouse keeper lives. And I will also do a little mixed media. I mean, using a pen, all of a sudden now it becomes mixed media, but just to add a little bit of detail here. And oh, there's actually some windows on that lighthouse. So that's going to kind of just, can everybody sort of see now where we are on Long Island? And let's just add, I think we could add a little bit of, oh, water. Yeah. I've always loved painting maps. I think it's partly because I'm also a graphic designer, and information and communication is a big part of my interests. Okay, so there we go. That's setting the stage. So I'm going to leave you here, and feel free to look up there at the clothesline. I have been practicing some of these paintings for a while, and so you can see some of my practice sessions. Okay, so now, Marjorie, if you would read the first passage from the book.
Yes, I'm going to read a passage from the book, and then we'll watch Michelle paint the passage. Then, on a cool spring night, while waiting for the aforementioned doctor, whose company I had been infrequently keeping and even less frequently enjoying, I finally had the chance when Benjamin Morse ponied up next to me at the bar at the Odeon. The Odeon, oh boy. It wasn't lost on me that literary greats like Tom Wolfe and Jay McInerney were known to have patronized the downtown eatery and had possibly even warmed the same stool that Ben Morse was sitting on.
Thank you. So, I don't know if any of you've been to the Odeon, it's a beautiful restaurant, it's got a real beautiful vibe in there with like nice mood, golden lighting. And so I'm gonna try and capture some of that, the bar is kind of Art Deco. And it has some beautiful, a wood backdrop and golden lighting. And so that's kind of the backdrop for the bar scene. Just put a little texture in here. This one is also wet on dry. And then so now I'm gonna put in, so I envision seeing them, this was written and I envision sort of seeing them from the back. Because I don't think Jane really ever describes what Julia looks like. So I'm just gonna, sorry?
That's a good point.
So I'm just gonna,
Everybody ask Jane.
yeah, we can ask her, but
I don't really like to describe exactly what everyone looks like because I like people to picture the characters for who they would picture themselves. So whatever you think Julia looks like, basically, that's what she looks like. And I know some people write much more descriptively, but I'm originally a screenwriter. So all that stuff was not something I was ever supposed to include. And I kind of took that method with me into my novel writing.
very cool.
Yeah.
You can see I have 2 cups here. I try and do warm colors, dipping, to keep the warm colors in this cup, and this is cool. We'll see as the evening progresses. I inevitably get mixed up and forget to do all that, but I'm gonna try to keep it that way. She's a Fire Island girl. She's in New York City. She's a hip girl. Julia. I have her in jeans. I kind of envision her. I don't know why. This cute red top with short sleeves. Maybe like a little bit of a puffy sleeve. And I would do her head and hair, but this might still be wet, so I'm not gonna do that. Now Ben ponies up to her, but I'm gonna have him standing. He's also in jeans because he's just like super cool dude. And his kind of, he also has like a leg bent. So that's him, and I have him in a purple shirt. I don't know why, but put him in purple, and that's a little wet. Also, he's in short sleeves, and he's a little bigger than her. Well, he's pretty big. I think she said he was pretty.
40 guy.
Yeah. I can't really do too much there because of that. Let me just do. There's a big. I want to just get. I love lettering and hand lettering, and Odeon has just like a beautiful neon sign outside. So I'm gonna bring that neon sign inside in this fun bright yellow. There's also my research little picture. There's a fun neon green clock. So I'm gonna put that in as well. Well, that's all drying. I kind of envisioned a stool, him sort of standing next to a stool. I don't know why I did, and I kind of envisioned these stools being sort of mid-century. And she there on the stool, and I would love to put her foot on that, that little footrest, and his foot also on the footrest, if I can make that happen. So he's behind that stool. What I haven't included yet is the counter of the bar, and that would go right about there. I mean, you know, the bar itself where you would sit and have your drinks on. Um, I'm just going to do it right over here. I know he orders a scotch and soda. I love painting food. So I'm just going to do that big here because that's going to be kind of, right. Scotch and soda he gets. And so that's always fun for me to paint drinks. And this is another pen, which is, it definitely is water soluble. So it bleeds sometimes just the way I want it to. In kind of a nice way. Maybe there's a straw in that. But it's actually, how's that? Okay, keep telling me. Okay.
There we go. Keep it- Stay behind and keep looking. Perfect.
So there's like a scotch and soda. And then it's still, so I kind of picture her, you know, now that I think about it, I gave her hair like mine tonight, where she's sort of blondish, and her hair is up in a bun. Because she's kind of loose and like carefree, and so I'm putting her in like a big bun with like Meghan Markle tendrils that kind of come down. And she, of course, is holding a glass of wine, and he's got his scotch and soda. And his hair, I think she said his hair was kind of wild. Um, so here's his hair. I'm using a big brush here. This is like a size 14. I may use this brush the whole night. It gets very thin at the point. Let's see, so, and I kind of have, here's like his ear. I have his hair sort of all pushed over to one side, kind of. His head looks a little big, but it's a little wonky. It's okay. And she's holding a glass of wine. What's up? Yeah.
There we go.
That's better?
Okay, just lean back. And- Okay.
She has wine. He's got his drink. His arm, I kind of picture him sort of like hugging, taking control of the whole bar. His arm is out, and her other hand is just sort of down. She's got, to go with her red shirt, she needs a little more red. She's got red Mary Janes, and they're kind of leaning on. Here's her other Mary Jane. And he's got like hiking boots, you know, because he's, you know, kind of rugged, and, you know, I don't know, I just kind of picture him in hiking boots. Here's his other boot. And boots have like, you know, that little tread thing on the bottom. Some of these, since they're still wet, I'm gonna have to I'll come back to finish. And then inside this Odeon was, there should be, oh, I don't wanna, there's like a little bit of that. I like when words aren't necessarily completed on a page. It just shows that more is going on. What kind of clock? I think it had numbers, so I'm not going to do them all, but let's make it like, need a little more of a drop shadow. Yeah. Sometimes these stools have another rung at the top and it might add a little more interest to do that.
That's not.
Oh, yeah. And this, I'm just gonna add a little drop shadow. And yeah,
Beautiful.
okay. I could keep going, but I'm gonna move on. I might come back to this one. Okay, thank you. Well, don't take it too far because I might come back to that. Okay, our next passage, Marjorie.
Yes. Passage number 2. It also didn't help that aside from hanging a hand-painted Love Shack sign on the front gate, Ben and I had barely changed the place since we bought it. Houses on Fire Island traditionally come with the entire contents included. And Caroline had beautiful taste: an Eames chair, a mid-century style sectional, an antique farmer's table. There was no reason to replace any of it. Plus, the house had good bones. A simple ranch built by an artist in the 50s. It had high ceilings, big windows to let the light in, and walls paneled in rare pecky cypress wood.
Sounds really nice. Yeah.
So it's actually based off of my house. So
Oh, wow.
yeah, all 4 corners in this book. So it's my house and across the street, and then the ball field and another house are in reality, it's my corner. So every step taken in this book, I could almost do with my eyes closed. Really a funny way to write because in my head, there's just no imagination about it. It's just all right there laid out. And the person who we bought the house from had excellent taste. We did have to replace things, unlike them, but she had amazing taste. Her name was Dottie Silver. And yes, everything in Fire Island stays in the house. So I still have like these beautiful corn dishes from Bonwit Teller of hers and these other dishes from Spain or Portugal that were hers. And there's just a lot of her still in the house, which is interesting.
Had the house had another owner before her? that
Yes.
also had-
Yes, the person who built the house was an artist, just like I said in the book. His name was Lester Rondell. He was a big ad exec, but he was also an artist. And he built the house, I think, in the 50s. So it's had only 3 owners. Yeah. But in between, a lot of people rented it. Like I rented it with my husband and my kids before we bought it. So there were a lot of renters. A lot of people say, oh, I rented that house, or they've lived in my house, that weren't one of the owners. Looks like it.
Oh, it does? Oh, wow.
Crazy. I've never even seen it.
All right. That's amazing.
Hmm.
Well, I'm sure it's very beautiful then. I
Everything.
did do a practice up there. You can see on the, but I'm always trying to, so I'm looking at that a little bit and seeing what I would do differently. Because,
This looks more like it than the practice. I saw your practice.
oh, good. Oh, okay.
I mean,
So happy.
it has these giant windows because it wasn't, the artist was, needed light, I guess.
Right. Okay. Nice.
Hmm. I have one piece of his art hanging over my kitchen.
Jane, is there an emotion that you want to portray with the house?
I'm sorry. I
Is
couldn't-
there an emotion that you're trying to portray with the house itself, or?
an emotion? I don't know. I mean, I guess the continuity of the island and the way things don't change hands that many times that you actually know, who owned it before and could even hear about from them who owned it before them. Do you know what I mean? Like it's unbelievable to me the way it is in Fire Island that people still say like when they pass my house, oh, that's the Silver House, even though I've lived there for 30 years. It's just very I don't know, linear. It just doesn't seem to change that much.
Jane, I wanted to ask you a question about, you had the voice of Julia who had passed away. And during our book discussion, we got into quite a conversation about people that had passed away and their spirits and their electromagnetic energy. And can I ask you how you feel about this?
Of course you could ask me. So this was originally a screenplay. And wait, oh, sorry. I just dropped everything. Hold on. This was originally a screenplay. And in the screenplay, it was about three men. And the three men, you know, I write for women. So my editor said, if you're writing this as a book, you really have to kind of get it from a female perspective. So that's when I decided to write it from Julia's perspective. Now, my mother had just passed away when I was writing this, and I was very in tune to all the spiritual stuff that went along with that. And I took a class in London, a Zoom class, it was during COVID, with a rabbi who spoke about the Jewish afterlife. It was a 6-week class about the Jewish afterlife, which I really knew very little about. And then I also went to this medium on Long Island, also on Zoom. And that was like a Catholic perspective. She was a Catholic woman. And between both of those perspectives, I just started really believing in the afterlife and that it could actually be Julia, you know, narrating this book. And I just believed it. So many things happened with my mom during that time that I really believed it. And I still believe it.
We asked the question and we had a group of about 24 in our book discussion. So then we asked how many feel that they have communicated at some point with somebody that had passed. And nearly everybody's hand went up. I can't remember.
Really?
Was it most people?
Quite a number of people, yeah.
Most people. Yeah, so it was quite interesting. So I was wondering how you would portray a spirit in a.
Yeah. So after when my mother was with us the summer before, we had seen, I'm sorry, will you hold on one second? Hold on, I'm sorry, there's too much noise downstairs. Could you please not talk? Hello? I have such bad ADD. Sorry, I have bad ADD and everyone's talking downstairs, so I couldn't hear everyone. So my mother had passed away, and a year before, there were these dolphins on the beach, and everyone said there are dolphins on the beach. And I took my mom out. I said, let's go see the dolphins. We started walking down the beach, and she said, I'm tired. I can't really keep up. And I said, okay, no big deal. I'll see dolphins another time. She passed away. It was and then the following summer came. I had a dream about dolphins, and I walked outside, I walked to the beach, and there were 5 dolphins in the ocean. And it was just the craziest coincidence. So I believe it.
I'm interested that you said you were a screenwriter, because I was envisioning it as a movie and how much I would enjoy it. Except how would you do that as a spirit? You know, that's a challenge, I would think, to create a movie. And how does that formulate?
Because if you think about it, think about a narrator. So she could just narrate it. Like, think about, I don't know, The Lovely Bones, I guess, had a narrator that was not alive. And I mean, right now there are people talking about making it into a television show, so hopefully we'll all be able to find out what happens and how it works out. But I think it's doable. I really do. A narrator.
I also really enjoyed how you wrote the men. They were funny.
Yes.
They were
Yeah,
really entertaining.
they are funny men. They're based on especially Shep. He's based on so many people from Fire Island, so many real people. So but not like, he's not an exact person. He's like a compilation of many men.
Um,
So,
I'm almost done.
the funny part is, there was a man when we first bought the house. His name is Bob Pitler, and I'd wake up on a Saturday morning before I met him, and I'd go and I'd hear someone in my living room, and there would be this older man standing there, and he'd say, "Hi, could I have a wet paper towel?" And I would be like, Okay." So I'd give him the wet paper towel. And then the next Saturday, the same thing would happen. This man would be standing in my living room. Could I have a wet paper towel? I gave him the wet paper towel. Finally, I was like, what do you need this for? It was to wipe the scoreboard on the baseball field because he taught the kids at 8:30 in the morning. So, and he did not care that, he got it from the person that lived there before us. And he didn't care that he didn't know me, and he didn't care that I was in my pajamas. He just walked into the house. And those kind of kooky people, by the end, I was like giving him coffee and a bagel. He was a little lonely. And he passed away 7 years ago. I ended up doing the eulogy at his funeral. Like there's kooky people all around in this town. And, observing them really helped me write the book.
Sounds like we had a wonderful description of the book and the house and the setting, and Michelle's almost finished with her interpretation of the house.
Pretty close.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this aside and come back to it also.
Oh, these ones are gorgeous.
Yeah.
Okay, I know, I'm trying to see how you see them on there, but anyway, the next scene, okay, this scene really, I got very emotional when I read this scene. I guess you'll understand when I read. The bicycle is often a vehicle of romance in a car-free town such as ours, but today it was anything but. The first sight of my barely ridden, bright yellow bike with the matching plastic ducky horn and baby seat attached was as brutal as I imagined it would be. Ben pulled it out angrily and dragged it to the back of the house, a little plot of dirt reserved for junk and firewood. He tossed it like an old horse put out to pasture and returned to the shed with a tear-stained face to collect his own bike. I had dreamed this moment for months. I had dreaded this moment for months, and even considered calling one of the local contractors to remove it before he arrived. But I worried that might have upset him more. Now, I wish I had.
Or Julia.
So I kind of envisioned the bicycle kind of leaning against, in the back of the yard, maybe leaning against a shed or against a fence. I kind of have it here just against like a decrepit wall. I have practiced this one, and I decided finally to actually also give it a flat tire just to kind of make it feel even more, abandoned. But there's just something, as Marjorie says, and Jane, that is just so emotional about a child's seat that was never used on a bicycle. It just really, pulls at your heart. So, and then just also the contrast of just the bright yellow, and how happy it was. And when it was when you tell people, I was telling people today what I was doing tonight, and I was telling them about the premise of the book. They're like, oh, it sounds so sad. But I don't know, she was so happy. I said that at the book club, like she was the happiest sad person. So it didn't really feel like a sad book to me. But I could see how people just hearing the premise could sort of maybe think that.
Yeah.
It's true that during our book club, that was one of the most prevalent themes that came out. And Jane, it was a very lively book discussion. I think I emailed you to tell you, we had 25 plus women here, and everyone shared their story. One man and one man who had very insightful thoughts as well. And would you like to add to that, Pat? It was so lively.
Yes, and there's always people that the glass is half full or the glass is half empty.
Yes,
And so there were just, I think, two people
Just
That-
two that I
And
think,
2 or 3,
Yes.
one didn't finish the book.
yes, but
Yeah.
everyone said they smiled through the
Yes.
entire time they read this book, which is
Most of
dealing
them,
with a
yes, it's-
heavy subject, but people were laughing out loud,
Yes, yes.
laughing out loud and
It was-
smiling throughout.
It was one of our very best, fun book discussions, really.
Yes.
So thank you, Jane.
When I first painted it there, well, until she comes back on, when I first painted it there, I had a green seat. And then in thinking about it, I was like, nope, I just wanted to keep it kind of sunny and all in the same color palette, orange and yellowish. So I changed it to orange and I like it much better.
I was just going to add that from the book club discussion that I have been approached by so many people who are widows who have told me the book really helped them to grieve, which has
Oh,
been
that is
so
great.
meaningful to me for that to have been the
Mhm.
result of writing this book. Even a whole group of 10 widows from Long Island came to Fire Island, rented a house for a weekend, and invited me over for their book talk. And it was just incredible. Really one of my favorite things as a writer that's ever happened to me.
And I think all the women love Renee's affair.
Guess what? I'm not going to tell you, but in Songs of Summer, I don't really don't want to tell. Okay, I'm going to tell you. In Songs of Summer, it's Renee's wedding that the girl's crashing. I'm not going to tell you who she's marrying.
Okay.
The one negative person, there was
Right?
a person that thought it was terrible that she was having an affair and then.
Cause it put the kid out.
With
Because the son passes
son.
out.
And then one of our best speakers said that the affair was not a problem, but she shouldn't have done it in her own home with her child there. They should have done it another place. That would have been the proper thing to do.
Yeah, no one's perfect, right?
I love that her character, the fact that she had to have that affair at her age, and why not? Why not? I really enjoyed that part, I was a little, I don't know that I would do that. And I was a little bit reluctant to say it, but I did enjoy her, the fact that she had the courage to go ahead. And as far as the son was concerned, he was not 20 years old. No. Come on. He would have had Chuck.
So is gay based on a real person? And if so, is he still single?
That's so funny. Gabe is not based on a real person. It was just like, I just figured it would be something like out of the ordinary, that he was so much younger and that he was a drummer and she's so conservative. I just wanted to find somebody that would be a big surprise in every way for her to have been with him. I mean, she was married to a very straight-laced accountant before. So I thought it would be fun, which it was. And I probably wouldn't do that either.
Now I'm listening to the audio version of your book. Did you choose the person who's narrating it? Because I love her voice for it.
Yes, you get to choose. It's so bizarre because I was a screenwriter before, and when you're a screenwriter, you don't get to choose anything. But when you're an author of a book, you get to choose the cover. You get, you don't have your final say, let's just say, on the cover. And they send you about 5 different people to listen to who read a little bit of the book, and you get to choose who's going to do the audio. And with this particular book, and I had to book a shoe story, which they did a great job with the audio, but sometimes it felt like she was speaking in like a sadder way. And I knew that with Julia, if she started speaking in a sad way, it would really be a problem for the book. So it was important to me that although Julia did not want to die, she was okay where she was. That was very important to me. So I needed her to speak in a more of an upbeat way for most of it, you know, and I think that was accomplished with this narrator. I think she did a great job.
Cause I always find when you read the book, you picture the person one way, then you also have to listen to the audio version. And it changes how I look at that person, just because I hear the voice to me is different. So it always changes my look of how that person is.
Yeah, I love when there's an audiobook where it's like I was just listening to Griffin Dunn's book. I mean, obviously it's a biography, so it's much easier. I love when you know, it's a person that that has something to do with the book, but I can't narrate a book, as a, you know, as you could all hear, I have an awful Long Island accent. So
Yeah, but I mean, it's Fire Island, it is Long Island, that kind of cool.
no. They would never want that. But yeah, I really wouldn't want to do it anyway.
Trying to show just a little garbage and, you know, not showing so much care for the bicycle. Sometimes you can't tell if it's dry or not, when you pick it up, you can sort of see, if you see reflection, it means it's still wet. I wanna add a dot for an eye for the duck, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, but I can't quite do that yet, it's still wet over there.
Thing for every book you read?
Not every book, but I always see the images as I'm reading them. I don't know if other people see things like that, but for sure, it sort of helps me understand the book, and it just helps me visualize what's happening. Yeah, yeah, please, I invite you to all see this sketchbook.
Yes.
What else does it say in this, about this? Um,
That's so interesting.
oh,
You just
where's
said,
the
Michelle,
picture?
I'm
Oh,
wondering,
firewood.
do people see books like a movie when they read them in the out of
Right,
the
that's, oh, so great.
This was very easy to visualize us, yeah. I felt it. Yeah.
Years ago, the other book that I absolutely read as a movie was Plum Island by Nelson DeMille. Felt like I was watching it the whole time.
Yeah, so it's kind of how I feel and what I'm trying to do here, obviously.
Is that you're a fan of Nancy Myers? Right, do you follow Nancy? Yes.
So who do you picture playing her in a movie or TV production? Who would you picture your head playing her?
Playing Julia?
Yeah,
Good question.
I can't.
Can't hear her.
Okay. So it's changed so much because I wrote the screenplay so long ago that all the characters, especially for Shep, everyone I've ever chosen to be Shep is long gone, which is terrible. But you know, like it was Paul Newman, and then he was Alan Arkin, and he just kept, you know, passing, whatever. But I don't know who I picked for Julia. I'm just not sure. Maybe did anyone see the new Dylan movie, A Complete Unknown?
Yes,
I really liked the woman who played Joan, was it Joan Baez?
yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I thought she was fantastic. And by the way, she has brown hair. Not blonde. But I don't say that in On Fire Island, but I say it in Seven Summer Weekends. Because in Seven Summer Weekends, you find out what happens to Ben. So. What?
Billy Crystal as Shep.
Billy Crystal and Shep, she said.
No, I don't think so. I really would love Harrison Ford as Shep, but you know, not gonna happen. I mean,
Okay, I'm gonna
Billy
move on.
Crystal, I guess I never really thought about it, and he is a big baseball person, so he could, and he's Jewish. Shep's Jewish. It could be Billy Crystal. I don't know.
Okay, oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I can't hear Julie Crystal doing a television show with all of those seasons.
To that camera.
In front of her. Up there. Up there, yeah. Or just put it down in front of her, that's where the camera thing. Yeah, right there.
Yeah, just as I was doing it right here.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay. All right, we're up for the next scene?
Yep.
Okay. A little more fun in this scene. And a girl's scene for sure. If challenged, I bet I could examine the contents of any random Manhattanite suitcase and tell you just where she was headed. The largest, a piece of fine leather luggage or a Louis Vuitton duffel filled with Arab's bikinis, matching sarongs, Hermes sarongs for day, nobles for night, the Hamptons. A medium-sized wheelie brimming with polo shirts and bright cardigans by Kohl or Jay McLaughlin, one-piece racers, tennis sneakers, and espadrilles. A large backpack or tote stuffed with 3 bikinis, a pair of cutoffs, jeans, a sweatshirt, Birkenstocks, and maybe a cotton button-down, but don't expect an iron. Fire Island.
Yeah, I just thought that was such a fun way of describing the people that travel to these places. I think Jane nailed it. I've been to all the places and I think so. I mean, it just felt so fun to me. This is
Thank
my
you.
Louis Vuitton duffel. I'm gonna do Connecticut kind of, maybe in like preppy colors. A green suitcase. Rollies. I've divided the page into 3. I have done a sample up there, but that felt very crowded and a little hard to read. So I'm going to try and do all of these a little smaller so that things are a little bit easier to understand. But we'll see. It's a lot to draw on this page. And then the duffel. Oh, the backpack. I thought that was so nailed it on the head. Maybe an orange backpack.
I was just wondering if people on the West Coast or the Midwest would get that. Find that as amusing as I did, the Southampton comparison.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But let them learn what we're about. Everyone knows that Hamptons are.
Although I'm sure there's comparisons in a lot of other places, right? I mean, for summer communities in different places off of Los Angeles, I don't know the comparisons,
Yes.
but the reason that all really came to me is because when my kids were little and they in school, when it would be like school would let out on a Friday afternoon and all the cars would be lined up to go away for the weekend, because that's where a lot of people from Manhattan go to summer places. And you could see the difference in the people that went to the Hamptons and that went to the Connecticut or even Westchester and the people that went to Fire Island. It was just a distinct difference. And it's funny because it comes right down to the bags they're carrying and what's in them. Except everybody had the same food. Same bags from like Zabar's and Cinderellas and all those things were the same no matter where they were going.
This is a pink called Opera Pink, which is just such a pretty name to me. And the color is so pretty.
I love this one.
Yeah.
TV or movie on location at your house in Farnham? Did you do that?
What?
Would you shoot the movie or the show?
Yeah. They would do it probably like, did you see that show, the Ellen Hildebrand book, the one that just Perfect Couple? Is that it?
Yeah.
That was filmed in Vancouver. It's supposed to be not Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket or something, but it's filmed in like an island off of Vancouver. I bet you they would probably, if this should ever really happen, I think they would film it similarly there. There's like a lot of Canadian tax breaks and stuff. Although who knows now, right? I have no idea. Wow, I never thought of that before just the second.
These are these Hermes Oran sandals, which are, I'm coveting these. I have a copy,
It's so
but the
funny.
real ones are really nice.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
My book, A Shoe Story, which is this one. I was so obsessed with the shoes, and I'm not really a shoe person. I mean, I am more now because I wrote that book, but the Oran sandals were, every chapter had a different name of a shoe, and the protagonist wore that shoe somewhere in the chapter. So yeah, those sandals were one of my favorites too.
Yeah. And then, I mean, shoes are just so fun to draw. And these are the Manolo sandals. Chances are there's something fabulous going on with them.
So we have the words and the pictures. What about the music? Do you, I guess for both of you, Jane, do you hear music?
I'm sorry, I couldn't
When you're writing. And Michelle in the band.
I couldn't hear the question.
But the question was, do you have music in your head when you are writing these scenes? Or envision music that goes, and isn't there, I think there is a playlist, correct, isn't?
Okay, it's very funny that you asked that question because, and I feel bad that I keep pulling up these other two books, but this book has a different song for every chapter, for the start of every chapter, Songs of Summer, and I made a playlist to go with it. And it was so much fun to choose the songs for each chapter. And sometimes I chose them because it was so obvious, it was about the whole theme of the chapter. And sometimes I just like they were eating clams and I used like pulling mussels from a shell, like a tiny little thing. So with this book, I really got into the music, but I think sometimes I hear songs. I remembered I heard a song when Ben was driving out to Long Island. I kept playing this one song in my head. I don't even remember the song now, but I mostly work in quiet and I don't really listen to music when I'm writing. But we're a very musical family. We're big Bruce Springsteen fans, so music is a huge part of our life, which is why it was very fun to do Songs of Summer the way I did. Yeah, and it's fun. The playlist is great. If anyone is on Instagram, if anyone's on Instagram, just message me and I'll send you the playlist for Songs of Summer. Or you could go to janeelrosen.com. It's on there.
I work usually quiet when I'm thinking up concepts. But once I kind of have an idea and have it planned out, then I love to listen to music. I'm recently, and actually I love to rewatch old shows. I'm actually rewatching Mad Men. And so that was also an inspiration for the Love Shack. And I loved that, the mid-centuryness of it and the chair in there. And Mad Men has been very inspiring the way that looks.
I am also rewatching Mad Men right
Oh,
now.
you're kidding.
Isn't that
I
funny?
recently read that, I mean, I like to, when I'm flying, I'm always painting even when I'm flying. And I just find it very relaxing and comforting to watch a show that I've already seen and known. I don't know, there's something very, and I've read that people sometimes do that without realizing that's why they're doing it. So,
Yeah, I watch it before I go to sleep. So it
Mhm.
doesn't matter if I fall asleep because I know it I've seen it more than one time.
Me
So
too,
it's like,
comparison.
doesn't matter when you fall asleep because you already know what happens.
Yeah,
So I think that's
Yep.
my favorite.
Do you have a background in fashion or just an interest in it? I'm just asking, because I haven't read your story yet, I'm on the wait list, but I finished one dress, which I loved, and I loved how intertwined all the characters, and it was just brilliant, I thought. Just wondered if you had a background or just a love of it or.
I do have a background in fashion and I use that so much in Nine Women, One Dress. Good call. I was in the garment center after college. I always loved to write, but I never thought I could make a living at it. And I was in the garment center and I used so much of that in Nine Women, One Dress. I mean, people that are garmentos all, often said to me, you must have a background in fashion because just small things like placing the shoulder pad, different things that you just would almost not know unless you did. But I worked at the ladies' coat market for about 5 years after college. So yeah, that's what I wish I studied English. I wish I was an English major, but I didn't. I studied fashion.
that's supposed to be a sneaker. Stan Smith is what I kind of have in mind for this preppy. I think there's some perforated dots in there. And then espadrilles, which just seems perfect. Okay, and then the last one is, now we get to the fun one, the Fire Island one. No, not, I'm talking about this. The last luggage, yep. Mhm.
Our Zoomers, great. What made you go into writing? Virgo, thank you.
Could you hear me?
What made you go into writing?
No, I heard you. Okay, sorry, I was muted. What made me go into writing? Well, when I was young, very, very young, like let's say sixth grade, I would write stories and my teacher would send me around with the stories to all the other teachers in elementary school. So I kind of knew then that I had something going on in the writing world. But as I said before, I got distracted and I didn't think I could support myself. And I majored in fashion in college and went into the garment center. And then when I had children, I took it up again and I started writing children's books. And I took a class. I had got an idea for a screenplay, and I took a class on writing screenplays. And I sold my first script to Miramax. It was kind of a miracle. I thought it was going to be easy after that, but it wasn't. It was it's kind of rough. The Hollywood thing is rough. So when I thought of the idea for Nine Women, One Dress, which came from the slightest, tiniest morsel of information. That's usually, my ideas usually come from a little tiny thing and then just explode. So someone told me on an airplane that they knew I was a writer, and they said they heard of a dress that was returned to Bloomingdale's covered in formaldehyde. So I just thought that was unbelievable. And I took that little bit and I worked backwards and traced that dress through 9 women before the formaldehyde situation. So that's when I started writing novels. I just thought, you know what? I've sold scripts, but I've never had anything made. And so many people make movies from books. So I tried my hands at writing a novel, and I'm now publishing my 6th one. So it was a good choice. And I love writing books. Very blessed.
Yeah.
You write on the beach?
On the actual sand?
Yeah.
No, no, I don't, because I write on a computer. I think on the beach, which is a lot of the writing, right? But yeah, I actually, everyone says it must be great to write in Fire Island, but just like on Fire Island, there's just so many people in and out constantly. Nobody even like barely knocks. So there's a lot of interruption. During the week, I could get some work done out there, but mostly I write on the off season. Also, my books have been coming out in the summer, so there's a lot of touring and things like that that happens over the summer.
They take you to write on Fire Island.
How long did it take me? It's not really a fair example because I had a screenplay. So imagine I had the most intense outline ever. I had a 90-page screenplay. Screenplays are usually much shorter than a book, 90 pages, because you think it's like a minute a scene. So an hour-and-a-half movie would be 90 pages. So I took a lot of the dialogue and I had the whole story completely mapped out. So it didn't take me that long. I don't even know how long, but usually it takes me a year between the rewrites, from starting and finishing with the editing and rewrites and all of that. Right now I'm working on something that's going to take me much longer because it's a tremendous amount of research. So it took me a couple of months to do the research before I even started.
You get an inspiration to start a book, or is it something you decide to write a book?
I mostly have gotten inspiration. I would say that the 2 follow-ups to On Fire Island were more so people asking for me to write continuations of On Fire Island. In other words, they want to hear more from this character or from this character. So I took that and kind of came up with it, almost like, I don't want to call it a homework assignment, but almost in that way. Other times I get a story in my head and I just have to write it down, which is really what happened with all the other stories.
Block in the middle or any place while you're writing where you can't come up with the next thought or scene or paragraph?
It's not, you mean like writer's block? I don't really suffer from writer's block, but let's say I get stuck with a word, especially as I'm getting older, when you can't think of a word and then the minute you stop thinking about it, it comes to you. Let's say I'm writing and I get stuck on a word or even the thought. I just put a bunch of X's and I come back to it the next day. I don't torture myself over it because when you're stuck like that, it's not going to work out well anyway. You're going to have to just rewrite it. So I don't get that stuck, but when I do, I just I move on.
I see all the Post-its there. Are those prompts for you, or is that, I would think?
Oh, this is so funny. I've never done this before, but the book that I'm writing now is very, very complicated. And I bought these are for movies, actually. They're usually used for scenes. But I decided to write all the chapters down and organize them that way. But after I did all of this, which looks like I'm so organized and I'm a real planner, I haven't looked at it. I forgot it was even there until you said it. I haven't looked at it again, but it's kind of like you just have to know that it's going to happen and it's going to work. So I like to plot things out at the beginning just so I know I have the whole story and that it's going to work out. But I don't necessarily go to it and look back at it as much as you would think. But that's what that is. That's my whole next book, which is pretty
They
cool.
look like prompts to me.
They're like prompts. They're just, you know, it says what's gonna happen in each chapter
I see.
and who's in each, this book has like 4 different voices in it, so it says who, you know, who's telling the story in the chapter. Yeah.
It's a pleasure for you and there's no anxiety involved.
The anxiety comes afterwards, or like as the book is coming out. So I do love writing. I've spoken to authors who say they hate writing. I love writing. I don't love, and I love talking to readers, like I love doing this. I don't love that, like I don't like reading reviews sometimes, and that brings me anxiety. And it brings me anxiety when the book comes out because it's just stressful. Like now I'm trying, you know, you want to make the USA Today bestsellers list. Like that's never happened. There's always another bar to reach. And I wish I didn't do that to myself, but I do that to myself. So when I wrote 9 Women, One Dress, that was the least anxiety I ever felt because I never thought anyone was going to read it but my family. So it just changes. Once you've all of a sudden had success, is a whole different kind of pressure on you. And that brings me anxiety.
Yeah, be careful what you wish for.
Yeah, exactly. And then you want to sell it to Hollywood, and then you want to, as I said, make a
Right.
bestseller list, and it's just, and you just want to sell books so that you could keep on writing. So, and then sometimes someone says something bad in Goodreads, and you try not to take it to heart, but it's hard.
Okay, Marjorie.
Have you had any occasion where somebody said, don't write a second one or something where they really tried to, you know, intellectually stop your career? Did you ever get any negative where you were upset enough to stop? Because I always think that's a problem with any artistic endeavor.
I never wanted to stop, but the funny thing is with my first novel, and again, I didn't realize how amazing this was, but it was reviewed all over the place and it got like all of this press. It was in People and Vanity Fair and Town and Country, and it just a lot. And all of a sudden they said the Times was going to review it. And it got this review from the Times that was just pretty awful in terms of it just barely even made sense. The person didn't like rom-coms and she shouldn't have really reviewed the book. But the funny thing is, you know, my kids grew up in New York City, so I went to nursery school or elementary school, whatever it is. Sometimes there would be famous actors or whatnot in your class. And Kevin Kline, the actor, I knew him through this nursery school. So I get this terrible review in the Times and my phone rings and I'm really upset. I really was upset about it because it was the New York Times. You're so excited to be in the New York Times finally, you know, it was so exciting. And then it was so awful. So he calls and he says, Jane? And I said, I recognize his voice right away. And I'm like, yes. And he said, even Meryl gets bad reviews. So out of my terrible New York Times review, at least I had a very sweet story of Kevin Kline calling me and saying even Meryl Streep gets bad reviews. But no, I never thought to quit. I love writing. I wouldn't quit.
Thank goodness.
I just want to interrupt Jane for a second. This is the last painting I'm going to be doing, and there's going to be a sunset on the water, but I'm prepping this, and then I'm going to jump to another so that this dries and I can then paint on top of it. So, Marjorie,
Silently gazing.
no, the grief title. Do you understand? No, I'm not doing that one. Okay. That's the last one.
It's
That's where we are. Sorry.
That's what I had. Okay. All right, scene 5. Once there, we stood silently gazing at the ocean. The dependable ebb and flow and ebb and flow and ebb and flow. Grief is tidal, then observed. Calm 1 minute and crushing the next.
Yes, we have. Thank you. Okay, so this is, I'm gonna let this dry. And I'm gonna go to this grief is title. So this to me, I was very moved by just that simple statement. Grief is title. It's because it's true. I'm sure we've all had some grief, and It can be very calming at one point, but then it can just drown you. So I thought that was just a beautifully poetic way of putting it. I'd never heard that before. So thank you, Jane, for that.
Thank you so much. I mean, I've unfortunately had a lot of grief in my life. I lost my dad when I was 11.
Yeah.
And I lost my sister when I was 25, 24, 25, 25. And assorted other, things, people. But I think I do know grief well. And I think it really, I don't want to say, and it informs my writing. I think you can tell that I've experienced it by the way I describe it. So yeah, and I think it's a very universal feeling.
Yeah.
My wife got arrested on fire island for bringing a drink.
What did you say?
Well, they actually picked on me because I was the stud or something.
Busted, Jane.
So they sent a lifeguard down to talk to me. I had wrapped up a bottle of orange juice and it was my wife and I and our 2 kids, and I figured, I know you can't take stuff on the beach, and I said, well, at least I can bring something to drink, not food. So anyway, I thought I was doing a pretty good job of passing the orange juice around, but somebody saw me. So I went up to the young lifeguard, said, they want you at the lifeguard stand. So I go up to the lifeguard stand and there's a cop waiting for me. So I was talking to the guy and I was saying, I knew I didn't think I'd wind up in chains, but I didn't want to have to go back to the case and everything else. So I really pleaded. And they said it was all my wife's fault, but not really. So anyway, they had pity on me, but he threw me off the beach. He said, all right, get your blanket, and go to the next beach, which I guess was 100 yards away. And I think it was just somebody trying to have some power, and there's nothing I could have done about it. I didn't bring my gun. So anyway, we just moved to the next beach. I was somewhat embarrassed, but I do that every day.
It's funny. Yep, it's true. I mean, I don't think it is. I think someone sued, and I think you can drink on the beach now. I'm not sure.
So what I'm trying to do here is to show the calm part of grief and also just the title and the movement of a huge wave.
We also have a question from one of our Zoomers, Jill Christie. What authors are always on your recommended reading list, Jane?
Okay.
Back to Jane. Hold on.
So I really think it's so individual, but I read, I mean, you could see all my books behind me, or some of them at least. Let me see. I love Emma Straub. I read a lot of Ellen Hildebrand. I read Annabelle Monaghan. The thing is, I try to read more of the things that I write, so it's not necessarily exactly what I may be reading if I was just free to read anything in the world, you know what I mean? And also, I'm asked to blurb books all the time, so I end up reading those books for friends, but let me see what I really love that's here. I loved Bess Kalb's book, Nobody Will Tell You This But Me. Adored that book. I liked Long Island Compromise. I don't know if any of you read that, but I thought that was great fun. What else? This is a good one. Kristen Pride, All the Men I've Loved Again. It's very fun. It's coming out soon. And I like Jo Piazza's book. All of her books, actually. The Sicilian Inheritance is fun. So it's just a few that I like.
Just highlight
Oh,
each one
thank
for our
you.
Zoomers.
Wow.
I'm also mixing in, I also have some acrylic wash here, which is kind of like a watercolor, but a much thicker. and the white is just a very opaque white. You can see it goes right over, and I can do, water with this. It can be, it's so, and again, it's, I guess, mixed media.
Jane, we have another Zoom question. Is Jane? Okay, you mentioned earlier that you base characters in your books on real life acquaintances. Have you ever had to navigate friends asking if a character is modeled after them?
Ooh, maybe that's a friend, that's a real friend asking.
I don't really, most of my characters are really made up. I would say that only Shep was really kind of a compilation of all the men on Fire Island. But there is once in a while, I did have like a situation where someone came up to me and asked if their husband was the person. It was a problem. But, and then I also wrote about, there was the agent in On Fire Island was based on, not my agent, but it was based on another agent that I knew. And my editor actually told me that I had to rewrite it because it was too unbelievable. Like, yeah, even though it was more true than what I wrote. Funny. But everyone thought they were Renee. Also, every lawyer, female lawyer on Fire Island came up to me and said, I'm Renee, aren't I?
Mm.
Oh. So everyone thinks that they're, someone. You have to be careful because people could get pretty angry, right? How about the market? The market on
Yeah.
Fire. That's really funny. They're kind
Yep.
of, so the market in real life is owned by a family called the Littles. So I named the market the Bigs, and it's owned by Wes and Lynn Little, and I named them Les and Winnie Biggs.
Yeah, that's great.
And I actually it's not them, it's fictional, but it is also very, very, very realistic as to what the Fire Island market is. So I went in and those were the only people I read the chapters to them and asked them if there was anything that bothered them, because it's pretty close. And also the ferry captain, physically, I had to really change the ferry captain because it was so obviously him. Yeah.
Okay.
But everyone still thought.
One second, please. We're gonna read the last passage, please, so I can.
Read the last
Yep.
passage. There's so much information to share. Okay, the last passage. A few blocks down, I found Ben sitting in a chair by the ocean. Even under his very descriptive, I recognized the comatose look in his tear-stained eyes. This auditory torture wasn't new for him. I had heard him filling the morning silence with my old phone messages more than once. He had kept a handful from before I was sick, and everyone from after. He listened to the before ones on repeat, simple messages from a busy, happy life.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm painting a different scene than that.
Oh,
Sorry, everybody.
yeah, okay, but today was.
Yes.
Sorry.
I did love that passage, Jane.
Love
I
that
wanna talk about
passage,
that.
but we're running out of time. Okay, number 7. But today was different. It was Ben who seemed hesitant about entering the ocean, while my anxiety and fear of death were no longer a factor. He successfully made his move, and I jumped right on and sat at the end of his board. My legs hung off the sides, each pushing through the water like the rudder of a sailboat. It was exhilarating. The sun was just right. The wind was perfect, and without fear weighing me down, I slipped between Ben's powerful chest and his outstretched arm as he paddled farther and farther from the coast. I had never felt more alive.
So I thought that, here's a woman who's passed, and here she's saying she'd never felt more alive. I thought that juxtaposition was great. So I'm gonna try and put them on this paddleboard together.
Wow.
Yes, we have a question from the audience.
When did you decide that your screenplay should be a book?
Hold on.
So I decided when I became a novelist, but this story meant so much to me. This On Fire Island story still does, that I wrote 9 Women, One Dress, Eliza Starts a Rumor, and a shoe story, just to make sure I would do it justice before I wrote On Fire Island. So I always wanted to write it, but I just wanted to make sure I was kind of ready to write it. And yeah, that's when I decided. So, and even now, I kind of wish it was going to be a movie, or even if it becomes a television show, I'm very excited for it to come to life that way. If it happens, it's very hard to actually, you may sell something or, shop something or whatever. It's very hot. There's a long road between them saying, yes, we're going to do this, and it actually happening.
Are you worried that the show might be not as good as your novel, or, might, so many times writers, by the time it gets on the screen, it's been so distorted. Is that something you'd be concerned about?
No, the person, for any other of my books, yes, that could have happened very easily. But for this project, if it does go through, I'm working with a producer that I feel very confident and close to, and she won't do that. She won't like bastardize it. It won't be exactly the same, but I'll have some say in it. So I'm not worried.
So I wanted to just say a couple of things while Michelle finishes up the painting. Jane is going to be at the North Shore Reads event, which is April 29th from 7 to 9, right here in Bayville, the Crescent Club. I believe it was sold out, but the club was getting such response, they were thinking of trying to expand it to include for many fans. And Bayville is going to be offering a raffle prize, and one of these lovely photos from this evening is going to be included in the Bayville raffle prize. So I think most of you, at least in the book club, have signed up for the North Shore Reads, but tell all your friends about the North Shore Reads event and Jane's book, and Jane will be there to sign your copies of your book or to purchase copies of books. And that's my closing comments, and we'll let Michelle finish up here, and Jane, if there's anything you wanted to say.
One other thing I want to say is I'm putting Julia in white, obviously, sitting on the end of the board.
What I want to say is, wow, this was fantastic. Michelle's so talented.
Thank you.
That last one is just exquisite. I can tell already. I also want to say that you are all very, very lucky, beyond lucky, to have Marjorie as your, I don't know, are you a librarian or whatever you're called? Because
Agreed.
she is fabulous and creative and innovative and so dedicated to making everything wonderful and special. And I just props to you because you're amazing.
Agreed.
On that, I
Here.
hope everyone please follow me on Instagram at Jane L. Rosen. Keep in touch. You'll see, maybe I'll meet you in person one day at an event. And if you want to get my newsletter, just shoot me a message and I'll put you on my mailing list. And I hope to see you all soon and follow each other for many years. So thank you for having me.